Hey, what's up? It's Jared. So I have a productivity video for you today, and it is on the topic of how I use Todoist for my task management. Now, I've made a lot of videos talking about Notion and how I'm using it to just kind of organize and structure and track a lot of my life, and I absolutely love Notion for all of those things. But one of the things that Notion is a little bit more tricky to use is as a task manager. And so I've been using Todoist for a while. I've been using it for a lot longer than I've been using Notion. And I like Todoist for a variety of different reasons. And so I wanted to talk about how I'm using Todoist right now because I'm using it mainly as a task manager and to kind of keep tabs on incoming things that sometimes become a little overwhelming to manage, like emails that you need to respond to and stuff like that you might not necessarily be able to get to right away, but you don't want to forget about. So Todoist, for those of you that haven't ever used it before, it is a task and project manager. It's simplified in regards to a lot of other project management apps out there that have just endless features. Todoist has some good features and some things that are super useful, but it does keep it kind of simple. And a lot of people have been requesting that Todoist add all of these features, but I kind of hope that they maintain the simplicity of it because it's not overcomplicated right now. It's a simple process to use. I can get in and access what I need to do, add tasks, check them off, move along, and get in and out of the application really fast, and I really like that about it. Now, there are some features that I consider like killer features that I think make Todoist just something that's impossible for me to replace right now. And the number one thing is the simplicity of adding tasks. Like, you don't have to add a task and then choose a date and then choose a project or a folder that it goes in and toggle all these different things. You could simply type all of it out. So I could type out film Todoist video, hashtag, and then start typing the project name. Don't even have to type the whole thing because it's auto-filling it. Hit enter, type in tomorrow, 9 a.m., and then also add like a priority to it really easily, all just typing it out. And it takes me no time to enter a new task. So when I'm going through and entering tasks that I know that I need to accomplish for the next day, it's a super fast process. I don't have to sit there and toggle and assign and do all these different things. I can easily get everything into Todoist and move on without wasting a bunch of time. There are also a ton of integrations with Todoist. That is something that really, I guess it didn't surprise me, but just the amount of integrations and the way that I can utilize Todoist was a little bit of a surprise because you think task management and you think, oh, it's easy, something simple, there isn't a whole lot to it. But there are so many different ways to automate things, and I'll talk about that a little bit more as we get through this video. It's also super fast. A lot of apps get a little heavy and they're slow to load. Even if you're offline, they're sometimes clunky, and Todoist is just snappy and fast. I never have any issues waiting for it to load. It syncs really fast, so I add a task, boom, it's up in the cloud already, and it's available on any of my other devices. Talking about the next killer thing is it's cross-platform, and not just iPhone and Android, but there's desktop apps for Mac and PC. And then, of course, there is iPhone and Android, and there's an iPad app as well. And so you can utilize Todoist pretty much on anything, and you can also utilize it in a web form. So when I'm on something like a Chromebook, like my Pixel Book Go here that I'm going to talk about in a video over on my State of Tech YouTube channel, I can utilize Todoist anywhere, and it's just easy. The layout is also very simple. There's no real way to get lost in Todoist. You can overcomplicate things, and I have a tendency to do that sometimes by setting up projects and sub-projects and all of this stuff. But the user interface is super simple, and that's what makes it easy for me to get in, look at the tasks that I have, prioritize how I'm going to tackle them, and then get things done, check them off, and move on to the next. It also gamifies the process by allowing you to achieve a certain amount of tasks and keep a streak going. And so it's nice to keep that streak going because I know that if I manage 5 tasks that day, I'm going to keep my streak going, and then I want a maximum of 30 per week, and you can set that customized. And then also it has what's called karma points, which is kind of like unlocking new achievements for completing a certain amount of tasks. And so it's nice to actually like unlock those, and you really feel like you've made some momentum because you're unlocking these achievements and moving forward. Sometimes you can feel like you haven't gotten much done, but then when you check off a couple of tasks and some new achievement pops up, and you know that that achievement took a lot of time to get to, it feels kind of neat just to have that kind of gamification there. And then I mentioned this already before, but it works offline, which is great. So if I'm adding tasks in an offline state because there's no internet or something like that, the moment that I get to internet, it's going to connect and sync those tasks. Anything, of course, that I added from somewhere else isn't going to show up on an offline device until it does connect. But that whole like working offline and then going online just seems to be really good, and I haven't had any issues there. So there are a lot of different kind of views and ways to kind of organize and structure things in Todoist, so I'm going to go over that really quick. The main views are your inbox, which is where I put everything. When I am adding tasks, when I'm adding something, it just typically goes right into my inbox if I'm not 100% sure where I want to assign it yet. You have your today view, which is going to show you everything that is tasked with the due date of today, which is great because when I'm adding a task, I could put film Todoist video tomorrow. And then when I look at Todoist tomorrow, that task is going to show up in the Today tab, which is great. I also set a custom filter for due within 14 days. By default, there is a due within 7 days, but sometimes I like to look out 2 weeks in advance and be able to see more tasks. So there's also filtering so that you can filter tasks by date, you can filter them by project and all of that, and even see tasks as they're appearing in the future through different projects. You can archive projects that are complete so that you can come back to them later if you need to. You can label everything with custom labels like in progress, completed, waiting. A lot of times I am waiting on a task. I can't check it off yet, but I don't just want it sitting there with no custom label on it. I want to put it as waiting so that way I know when I look at it, it's one that I don't have to worry about. Or I could even show a filtered view that removes all tasks that are waiting so I don't have a bunch of tasks that I can't do anything about showing up in my today view, which is a nice feature there as well. And that has to do with filtering, which is your ability to create custom filters to display tasks in different ways by due date, by future due date, by a label, by a project, by labels that are similar that can show up in different projects. So there's a lot of different ways to view all of your tasks. So how am I utilizing Todoist? I think this is where I have found Todoist to be extremely useful, even though I'm utilizing other applications like Notion. Todoist is doing these following things, and Notion can't really do them too well for me yet. Maybe it will in the future, but right now Todoist is the best option. And I've tried many other applications for task management, even just the simple reminders app in the iPhone, all the way to something more advanced, even something like Asana, which is a very robust task management platform, project manager as well. So I utilize it for managing projects. I kind of have everything broken up into either a major project or a life area. So I have like my different main focus areas like Hill Media Group, State of Tech, Ditch Auto, this YouTube channel, which is kind of like just anything that's under my own name. I have an areas project called Home, which is any tasks that I'm going to be doing or taking care of that are in regards to my home life. And so I've set up my projects that way. Now, I used to set up projects underneath those. So those were kind of like the main areas, and then I'd have projects underneath them. But since Todoist added sectioning within projects, I've just created sections instead because I could still see everything in a nice view without having to have all of these projects underneath, which to me just kind of got a little overwhelming to have all of those. So I'll have my major projects or life areas, and then underneath that I'll have the sub projects. So for Hill Media Group, if I'm working on a website, I will just create either a sub-project or just add it in a section. So I have sections underneath my projects also, instead of creating projects, which really should have just been sections. And that may sound a little confusing, but it was just an organizational issue that Todoist seemed to have before that they fixed by adding the ability to create sections. So now instead of making something a project when really only it should have been something that was used for separating tasks, I can now just use separation for that and only create projects when I have a standalone project that needs that. So I do create sections within the main project, and then I create sub-projects for temporary grouping of multiple tasks that have to do with a single project. So I hope that I'm illustrating that well enough. If I didn't, ask any questions that you have for me down in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to explain that a little bit further. Recurring tasks also is super important. I have recurring tasks, things that I check on weekly or monthly, sometimes even daily, and I want those to be automated. So when I check one off, it automatically creates the next task for me. For example, each week I want to check in on my personal goals for the year 2020. And I want to make sure that I'm checking on the status of those goals every week. So I have Todoist automatically create a task, and it was very easy to do this. I just simply type in update 2020 goals weekly on Monday, hashtag Jared Hill, and it creates a Todoist task that's going to show up weekly, every week, on a specific day. I could name that day, whether it's Monday, or I can just say weekly, and it will go weekly from the day that I created the task on. And then it will also file that underneath the project, which is myself, Jared Hill. And then each week when I check that off, it goes ahead and creates the following week's task, which is awesome. I absolutely love that. And so I have some tasks that are daily, some that are weekly, some that are monthly. And it's nice that that's all automated, and I don't have to worry about typing in that task every single time because I would probably forget it. I also utilize the prioritization of tasks by choosing a priority level or a color. So a priority level is associated with a color, and it's automatically going to organize those tasks for you in your task list based on priority and the time that the task is due. And that's nice because I can look at the tasks, and anything that is in red, I know that it's a urgent one that I need to take care of that day. And it's very easy to add that priority to it. I don't have to select multiple things or whatever. I could just type in that priority right as I'm creating the task, and it sets it up. Email reminders is another way that I use it. I've been using Spark, which is an email application, and Spark works with Todoist. So the unique thing about Spark email is that every email can have its own URL. So when you create a shareable URL for an email, you can then link it to something else. And if you click on the link, it'll open up the email. And if you have Spark on your computer, it just opens it right up in the Spark app. If you're not on your own computer, it will open it up in the web browser, and you'll have to log in. So it's not publicly available. But I can have that share to Todoist, and then I have all the emails that I know I need to follow up on. Now, Spark and a lot of other email apps have the ability to set a reminder for an email or put it in a special folder or flag it or something like that. But I've gotten in the habit of getting in my email, getting it cleared out, and then getting out of my email. I don't want to spend all this time in my email application. I just want to get in and get out. And so sometimes emails would fall through the cracks because they would go into my red emails and they'd get buried. And so now I can actually just send that email to Todoist. It's in Todoist. I click on the link in Todoist. It opens up the email. I respond to the email. I check it off in Todoist. And so now it's an automated process of adding that to Todoist and being able to check it off as a task. Whereas before, if it was an email I knew I needed to take care of, I would add it to Todoist manually, type it in, and then I'd have to go back to my email later, search for that email, find it. So this process has actually just been extremely awesome and super fast because of that integration with the Spark app. So also personal reminders. Sometimes I just need to remind myself of something, and I'll throw that in the inbox really quick. It's super easy to type in a quick note, add a reminder time to it, whether it's today or another day, and then I can check that off and remove it. So I also use Todoist for my reminders. I mentioned before the cross-platform of Todoist. I am always utilizing different devices. I have every device that you can imagine, and so whether I'm on a Mac or a PC, an iPhone, an iPad, or an Android phone, I want Todoist to work. The only thing that doesn't work within Todoist on these other apps is with Spark. Spark only works, this integration with Todoist only works on the Mac or on iPhone or iPad devices. It doesn't work on Android yet. I'm hoping that that comes soon. That's not a Todoist thing. That is a Spark integration thing. None of the Spark integrations seem to be available yet on Android, so hopefully that'll come soon. It's also really easy to reschedule tasks. An issue that I had with other task managers is if you needed to move a task from today to tomorrow or later on in the week, it was kind of a pain in the butt. You had to go to the date picker, pick something from the calendar, choose the time, and it was kind of a really just a bummer of a process. But rescheduling a task in Todoist is extremely easy. And so if there is tasks that need to go from today to tomorrow or to another day, it's only a click or two and they're moved on, or I can easily regroup tasks in bulk by clicking and selecting a bunch and then moving them to another date as well. I've absolutely fallen in love with automated tasks as well. So things that happen that specifically trigger an action to create a task so that I have an automated reminder process. When it comes to creating videos and stuff like this, I'm good at like sitting down and recording the video and then getting it edited and getting it published, but sharing it to social media and all the little things that come along after that with like promoting your video end up falling by the wayside. So I can create these triggers that happen when something happens using Zapier. I can catch that trigger using an integration with Zapier, and then it's going to automatically create a task for me in Todoist, which is just awesome. I've set many of these up. For example, when I post a new video to YouTube, it's automatically going to see that. It's going to create a couple of different tasks for me in Todoist, such as sharing that to social media. And then there's also a few checklist items, things that I do like paying attention to the comments really closely for the first couple of hours for people that are making that are subscribers who see the video immediately and then make some comments, and just some things just to remind me of the things that are important to me when publishing a video. And that's just one example. There are lots of different ways that you can integrate Todoist with many other applications using Zapier. I may even make a video on that in the future because the integrations are huge, and it's also another reason why I can't get away from Todoist even if I try, because the integrations, there are just so many of them, and the automated aspect of that is great. So being able to automate anything based on some sort of a trigger is great, because an action that took place outside of Todoist that's going to result in needing to do some other tasks can easily be caught, and an action could be triggered that creates a specific task that I've already predetermined that's going to show up automatically in my Todoist, even giving it a date and a time that it needs to be finished by, which is absolutely great, and putting it in the appropriate project. So for me, it's kind of nerdy stuff, but it absolutely helps me out with my workflow and reminds me to do things that are very easy to forget sometimes. So I want to spend a couple of seconds talking about the integrations, because I've mentioned them already. Like the Zapier integration allows you to connect to Todoist and then also connect many applications through Zapier. Zapier is basically like this huge funnel where any other application that will work with Zapier can be customized to put out some sort of a trigger or a task or something like that in Todoist. And it works both ways. It works in many different ways. Completing tasks in Todoist can do different things. So there's so many different actions that can take place. And it's hard to explain, so I probably will create another video on this topic. But if you really want that, let me know down in the comment section below what other applications you use and that you would like to have talking to Todoist, and maybe some ideas that'll help me better produce a video that will be more interesting to you. So I could do things like automatically add calendar events to Todoist. When using Zapier, I can keep a log of completed tasks in something like Evernote. So every task that I complete, it can add it to a single Evernote note. So I just have this long list of completed tasks. I can also actually do that based on project as well. So tasks that were completed in a certain project go to a certain note. Tasks that were completed in a different project go to a different note. So there's just so many different ways that you can even do that. I used to create a card of uncompleted tasks every day in Trello when I was using Trello. I was using Trello before I moved over to Notion. And then I can also ping a channel on Slack when a task is complete. So I don't use Slack so much anymore because I'm just a one-man show now. But when I had a small team, I would actually have like completed tasks go into a Slack channel. So that way, every time somebody completed a task, there would be a little ping in the Slack channel. It would keep us all excited and motivated to like keep toggling off new tasks. So why not something else? Like, why not use Notion, or why not use just a simple task management app that's not Todoist? Well, the simple addition of tasks is probably my number one. It's easier to just get into Todoist, knock out a real quick task, and then move on. Like, if you're going to create lists, it needs to be simple, needs to be an easy process that doesn't get in your way. Otherwise, you're not going to get in the best practice of making these lists and having reminders and stuff like that. So the simple addition of tasks. Integrations are also huge. If Todoist didn't have all these integrations, I probably would just use Notion for my task management, because then I can integrate with the projects and stuff that I'm also keeping information within Notion and my client CRM and all that stuff. You know, it just is what it is. Todoist is powerful enough and feature-packed enough without being over the top that it keeps me there. It's an easy to use, and there hasn't been anything else that's come across my plate yet that is easier. Not a single task conflict has happened when moving between different devices. I used to run into this issue all the time when I tried to use Evernote for my task management. I would add some tasks in Evernote on my computer. Then a few minutes later, I would go and make some changes in Evernote on my phone, and there would be a second note created that was conflict of the first note, and it just drove me up the wall all the time that I would have these issues, and then I'd have to go back and kind of do double work and migrate those two tasks, those two notes, and it was just a pain. And it's not the only app that I've had that issue with. Todoist, I've never had that issue of updating tasks on a certain device and then having issues when I got over to the other device. It's been a perfect experience every time. And also, Todoist has done a good job of not just adding every single feature that everybody asks for. If they had done that, it would be a convoluted tool that would be hard to use, but they are staying true to the task management, checking off the boxes, and only adding in features that builds upon that experience without getting over the top. They focus on what's going to keep the process simple, which is what I like, not giving everybody every little tiny feature that they ask for. Of course, there are some things that I do wish Todoist had, but at the same time, like, those things would take away from the simplicity of the tool itself, which then would be contradictory to everything that I talked about earlier in this video. So some closing thoughts. I mean, unlike others, I really don't wish that Todoist did more. Most people are saying, oh, I wish it did this, I wish it did that. I like it for what it is because I'm utilizing Notion for everything else. And yes, I wish I could make Notion and Todoist talk so that the task management in Todoist could be updated and kept also in Notion, because I tie in all of my projects and all the information and everything that I need to know with my projects in Notion. And so if those two could talk, that would be great. But that's not Todoist's issue. That's the fact that Notion doesn't have an API, and I can't use Notion with even Zapier to make Todoist and Notion talk. So it's not a Todoist issue. It's just a fact that I'm using two different pieces of software that don't, have any way to connect. So like I said, I wish that I could get those to connect, but it's the best process for me right now to use Notion and use Todoist. And I probably will even do a video on how I use the two together, because I know I went through a lot in this video, and I've had some conversations with people about my videos lately, and I do tend to cover an awful lot into a short period of time. Even though a video like this is kind of long for a typical YouTube video, I utilize these tools every day in my life. I consider myself to be a more pro user of these tools because I only talk about the tools that I am implementing and that I have a good solid understanding of. So I hope that this video helped you out, helped you figure out a little bit more on how you can use Todoist in a better way. Todoist is fantastic. If you haven't signed up for Todoist, I've got a link for you down below. It gives me like a free month or something like that when you sign up, and I think it also gives you a free month. I'm not 100% sure, but I'll put that link and exactly what the offer is down in the description below of this video. Make sure to subscribe to the videos here on YouTube. If you're not watching on YouTube, head on over to YouTube and subscribe because I'll be producing more videos on the topic of productivity, how I'm managing all of the different things that I manage, and also just on a variety of different life topics as well. So if you are interested, make sure to click that subscribe and click the bell next to it so you get notified. But that's going to do it for this video. Thanks so much for being here and watching to the end. I hope to see you in the next one. Take care.